Views and opinions expressed in this production are those of the individual and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Shooters Nation or our sponsors. Information provided on this show is not a replacement for legal counsel or professional training. Listener and viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on live shows.
Welcome to the Shooters Nation podcast, the show created for you, the armed citizen. Join our hosts and subject matter experts as we talk about guns and gear, practical training and knowledge, Second Amendment issues, and the firearms culture. Be sure to join us after the show at shootersnation.com and become part of the Shooters Nation.
Hey everybody, welcome to Shooters Nation podcast. What is the Shooters Nation? You are. That's right, you are the Shooters Nation, and this is the only talk show on the internet that was designed specifically from the ground up for you, the everyday armed American citizen. If you like what you're hearing on the show, we hope that you'll support us. You can do that several ways. First, subscribe to us on whichever app or channel you use to listen to the podcast. Again, as silly as it sounds, the more subscribers we have, the more subscribers we get. Second, become a patron at patreon.com/shootersnation. Third, and this is something you can do for free, share us with your friends, spread the word, tell people about us, get more people listening to this show. Last but not least, we hope that you'll connect with us after the show. The hub for all things Shooters Nation is shootersnation.com. That's where you'll find links to all of our social media and the full catalog of our shows, complete with supplemental information. I am your host, David Yancey. And this episode is part 2 of our 2-part series on the National Rifle Association's Dumpster Fire of financial mismanagement, fiduciary betrayal, internal chaos, accusations of treason between chief parties, and pretty much all things bad. If you missed the first episode, I would encourage you to stop right now and listen to episode number 57 first. In episode 57, we started by laying the groundwork for this conversation, the one that you're about to hear. Much the same as you would want your doctor to tell you bad news about your health so that you could work with him to come up with a plan to get you back on a better track, to get you back healthy. We spent last episode talking about the NRA's history. And as listeners of that episode can attest, the NRA's history isn't all good. So you need to understand the bad before you can start to develop a plan for good. Based on some feedback that we've gotten from our listeners since last week, episode 57 was eye-opening. Specifically, almost all of the comments that we've received in the week since we released episode 57 were from people who were completely unaware that the NRA has had a hand in so many of our nation's gun control laws. The kind of gun control laws that have restricted the right to bear arms, not necessarily involved in gun control laws like they were fending them off, like you would think that the NRA should do, right? We've also heard back from folks who had no idea that the NRA had essentially been burned to the ground once before and reinvented back in 1977. If you have no idea what I'm talking about when I reference the Cincinnati Revolt or the Cincinnati Rebellion of 1977 with the NRA, go back, listen to episode 57, right? It's pretty eye-opening. So in this episode, you're going to hear the second half of the conversation between myself, Sandy, and Jordan as we talk about the current state of affairs at the NRA. And in the weeks since we released part 1, even more board members of the NRA have been ousted from the roles that they filled within the organization. And from all appearances, they were ousted in retaliation for them speaking out against Wayne LaPierre and against the spending practices of both the NRA and its former advertising agency, Ackerman McQueen. Since part 1 aired, Dwayne Liptak, executive vice president in charge of pretty much everything at Magpul Industries, was relieved of his duties as chairman of the Education and Training Committee, relieved from the Committee on Military and Veterans Affairs, and relieved from the Sport Shooting Committee. So who's Dwayne Liptak, and why does any of that matter? So again, Executive Vice President at Magpul Industries. If you're involved in firearms at all, especially AR-15 platform, rifles, you probably know who Magpul is. Dwayne pretty much runs the show now. Prior to him taking on that role in 2017, he was Director of Product Management and Marketing at Magpul. And then prior to that, he was just a Director of Developing and Managing Training at Magpul. Prior to that, he worked for Brownells. You may have heard of them, a small little gun and reloading supplier based out of Iowa. Small shop, just small online presence that sells millions of dollars worth of stuff every year. Prior to that, he was also, so while he was at Brownells, he was Director of Government Programs and Training. And then he was also the Law Enforcement Division Coordinator and Training Program Manager at Brownells. Before that, he was an F-18 pilot and in the United States Marine Corps. And prior to that, he was an operations officer in the United States Marine Corps. And prior to that, he was a pilot again in the United States Marine Corps. So this man knows something about military affairs and veterans affairs. He has a heart for that, yet he was relieved from his Committee on Military Affairs and Veterans Affairs with the NRA. The other individual that was relieved from the NRA, as far as we know, from the board of the directors at the NRA, is Shaun Maloney. Shaun is an attorney and a pro-2A activist, and he had a seat on the NRA's Institute for Legislative Action, or the NRA-ILA, Grassroots Development Committee. Ostensibly, he was relieved for speaking out against cronyism and financial impropriety within the organization, the same that the others have been relieved for, as far as we know. To better understand why that is so shocking, it's perhaps instrumental to understand some of Mr. Maloney's accomplishments over the years. And the best way to do that is to read from Shaun Maloney's letter to Carolyn Meadows, dated July 12th, 2019. Carolyn Meadows is currently the president of the NRA. And he wrote her and he said, shockingly, you even removed me from the NRA-ILA Grassroots Development Committee. After many years of serving on that committee with perfect attendance, we talked about that in the last episode, how many board members are board members, almost honorific titles only. They don't even make it to meetings, right? They don't show up and vote on anything. So Mr. Maloney, perfect attendance. He said, after years of volunteer grassroots activism, I was recognized in 2010 with the NRA-ILA J.M. Littlefield Volunteer of the Year Award and recognized on the floor of the Ohio House of Representatives for my work as an election volunteer coordinator for the NRA-ILA in Ohio. In 2012, I was inducted into the NRA-ILA Election Volunteer Coordinator Hall of Fame, resulting from my time and dedication to the grassroots division as an election volunteer coordinator. Over the years as a volunteer for the NRA, paying my own way for travel expenses, and receiving no compensation from the NRA, I have continued to dedicate myself to grassroots activism. In 2013, I traveled to Colorado to participate in the successful recall election effort of 2 anti-gun senators. Again in 2013, I traveled to Virginia under the direction of the NRA-ILA Grassroots Division to campaign on behalf of pro-gun gubernatorial Senate of Virginia and Virginia House of Delegates candidates. A lot of words there. In 2014, I traveled to Connecticut, Iowa, and Ohio under the direction of the NRA-ILA Grassroots Division and campaigned on behalf of the federal, state, and local pro-gun candidates during primary and general elections. Same in 2015, 2016, 2018, and so on, right? So this is a man who clearly sat around and did nothing, right? That's exactly why you would remove somebody who does nothing from the NRA's ILA Grassroots Development Committee. Except, wait, no, he actually did everything that you would want somebody in that role to do and paid his own travel expenses. So anyway, here we are. The dumpster fire continues to blaze. And it's just, it's really pulling to mind, for me at least, and hopefully you, the listener, how dire this situation is and how important it is that we focus our attention on this and get involved personally. So finally, one comment that we received from a listener really needs to be mentioned. Posting under the name Charlie Foxtrot, this listener says, please make sure to continue to read up on what's going on to get the full breadth of the situation at the NRA. Don't fall for simplistic explanations. He went on to say, the truth is that there are no good guys in this whole mess. There are different corrupt factions with the NRA fighting each other. Well, I think we can all kind of see that here, right? Most of the NRA's legal actions seems to be unnecessary, frivolous, risky, he says, as it opens the NRA up to discovery and possibly only exists for the sole purpose of enriching Bill Brewer, who is the NRA's star lawyer, costing $36 million a year paid for by NRA donations. So thanks for that, Charlie. We agree. There's a lot to consider here. It looks like, really, the question that's been at the front of my mind, at least, is why is this persisting? Why hasn't Wayne LaPierre stepped down? Why hasn't this organization taken the necessary efforts to clean house and straighten things up and become fully transparent with the members? The only justification that I can think of in my mind that they're continuing to prolong this is just basic, pure, simple human greed, pride, and desire for power. And none of those things are compatible with what I would hope to be the mission statement of the NRA, to preserve and protect the Second Amendment. So, drama, folks. The NRA has it. The Second Amendment community doesn't need it. And I invite you now to settle back and join us for part 2 of our 2-part conversation on the NRA Dumpster Fire, as we ask ourselves what needs to be done and what role each of us, yourself included, plays in it. The current state of affairs in the NRA is a raging, pungent dumpster fire. And that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. So now that we've kind of set the stage of where we were and kind of shown the light very quickly on some of the NRA's less stellar moments over the course of history, I kind of think we need to talk about what we do now, right? So I'm going to throw a question out to you guys. Do we really need the NRA? Are any other alternatives viable at this point? Sandy, start with you, because I know Jordan's answer will be lengthy. What do you think?
I think that there's definitely not another organization that has the power behind it currently. That doesn't mean that if the NRA is disintegrated by the Attorney General in New York, that another entity won't gain that power and mobility. But I think that the NRA has worked really hard over this last 40 years, since the 70s, to do some good things for the Second Amendment community. And I think they have done a lot of good. And I think that they have become a powerful voice in that community. Do
you think they still have the power? In light of current events, do you think that they still do?
I think they did in 2016.
Well,
when they got Trump elected, and that's just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, but I'm talking about like right now. Given how bad off things are, do you think that having the NRA on your side as a politician is a good thing? Or do you think that most politicians are going to want to keep them at arm's length because they don't want the stink of it on them right now?
Well, I mean, I think Trump's recent tweets answer that question for you.
Well, he's
told them to stop fighting, clean up your crap, and focus on what's important.
Right.
So, I mean, if they can do that quickly, I think they could get back to where they were.
Okay. All right. Jordan, what do you think?
It's a tough question. When we talk about the size of the membership and the funding of the NRA and their potential impact, there aren't any viable alternatives. I'll put that in air quotes for listeners. There aren't any that have this anywhere near the same size and scope. But unfortunately, what we've seen throughout history overall, and most recently during my lifetime, is that the effectiveness that the NRA has had has not been, in my opinion, a positive one overall, especially during the Trump administration. We saw both, and this is such an interesting, it's difficult to even talk about this because, like, we're talking about Oliver North, Wayne LaPierre, Chris Cox. I'm not choosing sides here, right? Like these are all indefensible characters, in my opinion, at some level. And what I think is important to consider is, like, we have videos of Chris Cox. There's still a statement on the NRA's website, joint statement from Chris Cox and Wayne LaPierre, advocating for further regulation of the bump fire stocks, right, following the Vegas massacre, saying, hey, we believe, and there's video of Chris Cox advocating for red flag laws. And I know I may be kind of backtracking, not answering your question directly, but just something to consider when you spoke earlier about regulations preventing, the mentally ill or unfit from purchasing or possessing firearms. What we see consistently is a history of creating classifications of citizens whose rights are restricted or taken away. And what that allows then, while it seems well-intentioned and reasonable at the time, is that then those definitions are changed consistently and progressively to include an ever-broadening scope of citizens. So, for instance, drug users, right? Like, when you fill out a 4473 form, are you addicted to or a user of marijuana, right? That's that's something that makes you a prohibited person. Well, guess what? As more and more states legalize or decriminalize recreational or medical use of marijuana, it doesn't matter whether it's legal or illegal at the state level.
Right.
Federally, it's illegal for you to purchase or possess a firearm if you're a user of a controlled substance. And so I believe most clearly we saw in Hawaii, who has in Honolulu, who has very stringent gun registration. We saw letters being sent out because the local state and local government are very familiar with everyone who lawfully owns firearms. And when you apply for a marijuana, medical marijuana card, guess what? You can cross-reference those two different registrations.
Right.
So it's a way of applying. It seems reasonable. Here in Iowa, we had there was a hullabaloo made over our previous governor, I believe, signing a bill that would legalize, or however you want to de-restrict, I'm not really sure, decriminalize firearm ownership for the blind or vision impaired. And I was like, well, why would a blind person need you want blind people to have guns and just be firing? And it's like, well, guess what? Blind doesn't mean, like, you can be legally blind and still able to operate machinery, right?
Right.
Like a vehicle, or, I mean, it's just one of those weird classifications where when you say blind, people automatically think no vision or extremely impaired. But just because you have poor vision as you age and your vision is impaired, that doesn't mean that you no longer have a right to self-defense.
Right.
And
the NRA has done a really, really poor job of supporting the individual's rights in that case. Like you said, Cox being on record advocating for red flag laws and so here's what really pisses me off is when the NRA or NRAILA come out and make statements like Chris Cox's with regard, we support the use of extreme risk protection orders so long as due process is followed. And then we have Donald Trump saying and tweeting about these extreme risk protection orders or red flag laws. It's the same thing. But he made a statement saying, well, in many cases, it's not, the legal system takes too long. So I take the guns first, due process second. That's an absurd notion. That's can't think of the term, but that's like that. It's a violation of your constitutional rights to due process. So
just redefining what due process means, right? Okay, so anytime you're pulled over, if you don't have your proof of insurance handy, well, we're going to throw you in a jail cell and confiscate your vehicle until you can prove that you have insurance. No, that's not how we handle
innocent
it.
Until proven, or innocent until proven guilty, and except in this case where it's guilty until proven innocent. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, and again, it's like we have all these. Actually, something I should have jumped in on earlier, because just this afternoon I was reading an article talking about a now, I believe, 76-year-old man here in Iowa who was arrested. I'll pull the article up here on my my phone. I was reading an article from the Des Moines Register talking about a farmer who's been, for the past 40 years, has had no legal trouble other than a speeding ticket 6 years ago. But he lost his firearms. He had a misdemeanor conviction for having a loaded shotgun in his vehicle. So he was pulled over, had a loaded shotgun in his truck during hunting season, right? And so that's a DNR issue, right? But he ostensibly was using it for trap shooting, but because it was loaded, because it was even though it was a simple misdemeanor, it involved the use of a firearm, as we were talking about earlier. And so that classified him as a felon.
Yeah, it's a multiplier at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what happened, and then again, that's an NRA endorsed or sponsored measure, if you will, that, a conviction involving a firearm subjects you to a higher penalty, right?
So you see these billboards here in Tennessee still, where gun crime equals maximum time and stuff like that, right? So any crime that's committed with a gun present, now becomes a gun crime.
Yeah,
so
it's something else for the district attorney to throw at you. And what's interesting is that he applied to have his firearms rights restored under a Republican governor, and what happened was that he received a surprise visit from local law enforcement, to do a background check, and they found that he had several firearms or had access to firearms on his property, and a man in his late 70s was denied and convicted, as a felon, with access to firearms, simply because at one point he had a loaded shotgun in his truck. I want to talk about, like, it's really popular, especially the meme lords on Instagram and Facebook and elsewhere, right? Like we enjoy poking fun at FUDs and boomers, if you will, nobody needs an AR-15, a 30-round magazine, and what, it's like, okay, yeah, there's a kind of a misconception that anti-gun politicians or lobbyists are only interested in taking away assault rifles, right? The evil black assault rifles and AR-15s, and they think that they're hunting. Why would you need 30 rounds if you can't hit a deer with 10 rounds, you shouldn't be out in the field anyway. Well, that's not what it's about.
Yeah, you got this guy with a shotgun.
Yeah, here's a guy with a shotgun that had, maybe a 4 or 5 round magazine capacity. And because it was loaded and in his vehicle, and there's no, initially you had a question about firearms advocacy groups and their efficacy, if there's any viable alternatives to the NRA currently. And it's like, well, guess what? This man hasn't received a dime. This case should be used to,
where's the NRA? Where's the NRA for him? Where's the NRA defending him and his rights to have a firearm? You know what? So I grew up in rural, Kentucky, and farming was very common, still is. And, hey, go to a co-op and walk through the gravel parking lot and look in the cab of, any farmer's farm truck, any pickup truck or whatever, there that's all beaten and rusted and used as a workhorse. You're going to find a shotgun, or you're going to find a bolt action rifle or something, right? Because that is a tool for a farmer, like a shovel or a tractor or anything else. And so, yeah, that's just absurd. Okay.
Yeah. And this man trying to clear his record after 40 years, he's 76 years old. You really think he's at risk. And that's the thing is that consistently, it's not that the NRA, and I'm not just bashing them, but it's not just that they're silent, which is damning enough, but that they're counterproductive. They're actually, they are actually responsible historically for many of these laws, which have been used to take away the rights of American citizens.
Agree. So I'm looking across the table at Sandy. I've got her mic muted right now, so she's coughing coughing in the mic constantly. Sandy, you're gonna have to like wave or throw something at me if you want to speak, because you are muted right now. This is a beautiful thing. Like, marriages should come with this button. They should.
I concur.
I have her muted now, which is beautiful. I can say these things and I'm not dying. Yeah. Yes, she's disparaging your short marriage and your experience here, Jordan. But that's all right. We'll just keep going because she's muted. So here's my thing, right? So I asked the question: do we need the NRA or any alternatives viable? I'm struggling with this, honestly, right? I think that we need an NRA. I'm not sure that we need this one, right? And I'm positive that we don't need what's currently seen in the NRA and what it had been in the past prior to the 70s when it began to sort of stand against gun control, right? So the NRA prior to 1977, when it was all about brown rifles and common sense gun control and that kind of crap, we don't need that. We do need a no compromises NRA. We need the NRA that really truly means what Charlton Heston, said when he was theatrically holding the musket above the crowd from my cold dead hands. We need them to honest to God mean that. So, Sandy, you're unmuted now.
Thank you. Random fact, that was Ackerman McQueen who got Charlton Heston to be the spokesperson.
Isn't that
I didn't
great?
know that until I started reading. Anyway.
Yeah, I didn't know that until doing the research either. Yeah. But
that's how long they've been in business together. Yeah,
exactly right. So, but yeah, I mean, that it's such a riveting, iconic statement from my cold dead hands, right? But prior to 77, they were, here, take it from my warm, supple pink, soft hands, and
and that brown guy over there.
Tread on me harder, Daddy. Right. Yeah. So
I wanted to say, I think that we need a national organization, but I think we need state organizations just as badly, because
but that requires people to get off their asses and do something about the Second Amendment themselves instead of outsourcing
so
it.
Many of the laws and, cases that we see
state
like
level.
That are state level. And there's so much variation across the country in the state laws.
Right.
It's impossible to fight all that at a federal level. It has to be done on the state level. And if we don't have institutions in each state fighting against those laws in their communities, they're just going to start to take over.
So I'm adding this mentally to the notes. I want to talk about people being more involved individually. Again, briefly, I did a whole episode on this, but I want to say also, the thing that sucks about this again is the NRA ILA. I still feel like they'd probably been the most useful part of the organization in recent years, and like I said, that even that didn't completely impress me. They've gotten behind some things and made some concessions that I definitely did not support. But other than them, the only other thing that the NRA has ever really done well since its inception, I feel like, is firearms education. And it's a shame that, this is all lumped together. It's all carrying the stink right now of what's going on with the NRA. You think about firearms education for children, firearms safety, hunter education, firearms, trainer education at a very base level. The NRA has done those things pretty well. And yet now they're all carrying the stigma of this, the leprosy of what's going on inside the NRA and the board of directors.
I think that they've also done a good job at representing how large of a community that we are, because we're such a marginalized community and such a quieted community overall, because largely we just want to be left alone.
Yeah,
we don't like to speak up. So, we like to fly under the radar. And when you go to places like Washington, where it's super liberal and there aren't any of those people in that community, you have to have somebody come in from the outside and say, whoa, these people are here and they need to be heard. And I think that the NRA has done a good job at just acknowledging the size and scope of the Second Amendment supporters in the U.S.
Well, so I think it was the New York Times, which is not the news outlet that you expect to hear say anything positive about the NRA. And then they weren't saying this in a positive way. They were kind of cursing the NRA for this fact. But they were saying that the NRA paradoxically is at its best when it's being persecuted, right? So
absolutely,
that's when we're the strongest. That's when people really get active, was when there's a threat. And so I hope that same resiliency and that same force that galvanizes the membership kicks in here soon with what's going on.
Well, supposedly I read an article that was updated in July that said that they are seeing a surge in memberships this year. Well, and whether it's because of the, Democratic debates that are starting up and we're all starting to think about election year, or if it's because of all this drama they're going through, whatever, it's been down significantly for the past 2 years. And this year they're seeing
that's good. And
numbers that match like we had in 2016.
Double-edged sword. Now I'll explain why it's a double-edged sword, but it's good and it's bad. But it's, I think overall, the majority effect of this is good. So next thought from me, Wayne LaPierre, he needs to go.
Yeah.
I saw an article that called him radioactive, and I thought that's a great term, right? He's a radioactive leader at this point. And basically what the article was saying was that when all talk about an organization shifts to the organization's leadership, and that's all it's about, they're not talking about its principles or its mission or its objectives or, its goals. It's all about the person at the head of it, especially if it's negative.
You've become a stumbling block to
that
the
person
mission
has to
at that
go.
point. So whether you're guilty or not, you need to step aside and let the organization continue.
So why is he even staying around? Do you think it's pride? Is it greed? Why is he still here?
All of the above.
Yeah.
Oh no. I really feel like he has a solid interest in making sure that the NRA is still around in a few years, honestly.
Yeah, but that's a financial motivation, at least primarily, in my opinion. And it would, of course, of course you want the NRA to be around when you're drawing over $1 million a year. But it's
pretty
about
modest
more than that.
Salary compared to a lot of national organizations.
Oh, absolutely.
Honestly, what he makes is it's really not that much. There's smaller organizations that pay their CEOs like $10 million. So,
but again, what we've known for years is about the golden parachute and about everything else that he's been collecting. But what we haven't heard about is the hundreds of thousands of dollars in comped flights and suits and meals and everything else. And you're right. That
all approved by the financial committee at the NRA.
But
he's not the one that's swiping that card.
Don't act like they're
he's
all
not the
complicit.
one. He's not. I'm saying it's not him.
Well, you've got the fox guarding the
I'm not saying that there don't need to be changes there.
Right.
I'm just saying he didn't just go out on his own with a credit card and go on a shopping
Perfect
spree.
segue. Perfect segue in my next point. The NRA board of directors needs a solid house cleaning. The old guard needs to go.
Yeah. I mean, it's real simple to set some policies like, here's your budget for this.
Right.
Here's your budget for travel, whatever. And it may just be that because the budget was up significantly that year, the budget for his travel and expenditures went up significantly for that year.
Now,
we don't really know.
Let me say this. Let me say this about, and I'm going to be devil's advocate, and I feel a little dirty saying this. I'm going to compare Wayne LaPierre's situation, the perks that he enjoys and the earnings that he makes. I'm gonna compare it to an NFL linebacker or any other player, that's in the NFL. They make a lot of money for a short-term period of time because they know that their tenure is limited. They can't stay at the top of that game for very long. They might be injured grievously to the point that they can no longer, not only play ball but not function, physically very well for the rest of their lives. LaPierre, he as the head of a very politically charged organization, he could have been CEO of any major company. Okay. And he could have been making just as much money elsewhere. For him to take on the role of head of the NRA, he's now politically charged, and other companies may not may not want to touch him for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So he has to make his money here. And so there's a certain amount, of padding baked into his salary, because it's kind of like, I got to get my money now. Because if I leave this organization, or if you get rid of me, I may not be able to find employment quickly, easily anywhere else sometime soon. And so,
Isn't he getting paid when he leaves?
Well, for a period of time.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah.
Quite well.
So
here's what, and Sandy touched on this a little while ago, and absolutely, I understand what you're saying, Sandy, about his compensation in comparison to other similar executives. But my perspective on this is in relation to, so previously I was employed by both a 501c3 and a 501c4 that were very political, I was employed by organizations which were heavily funded by the large movers and shakers of Citizens United, which the NRA was also a part of. And there was a high emphasis on compliance and transparency and making sure that all activities were coded correctly, so as not, and it was drummed into us over and over that what you think, like a simple statement that you make during a meal with a volunteer, you never know who's recording, who's watching, and it's not worth coding your time as being under 501c3 activities. If you made any sort of political, anything that could be construed as lobbying, you would be endangering the entire organization and their mission at the federal and state and local levels simply by saying, advocating for one political candidate over another. And so what's really egregious to me is not the amount of money that Wayne LaPierre has drawn, but that he's willing to endanger the NRA and its purported efficacy over something so simple as his wardrobe and travel arrangements.
Agree.
That's what is egregious, extremely egregious to me, is it's like, yeah, absolutely. It's somewhat unfair, or I shouldn't say unfair, but maybe naive to say, well, look at this amount of money. Okay. Yeah, there's lots of people that are being compensated far more greatly. There's far worse or far more corrupt organizations politically. And you're naive if you don't think that's the case. But for you to endanger an entire movement, for you to endanger the state of firearms owners in the United States, that's what really pisses me off. That's what really offends me, is being that selfish and greedy and self-serving, that you would, and then trying to cover it up by punishing other members of the board.
Agreed.
Agreed. So that's what my true complaint is. It isn't about strictly the money or the power and influence of positions, but it's about endangering and compromising for such, like, it would almost be more justifiable if he was drawing 5 times the salary. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Agree. Instead of expensing these things out, just paying more so he can pay for the stuff honestly, I guess, if you will, right? So yeah,
absolutely
agree. And I think that's where we've really seen the NRA place in jeopardy here is these things that are coming to light. Is it too little, too late? Is it really? Are these outside forces going to just capitalize on this and pick the organization apart and destroy it, which is what they love to do, or what? And so, like you said, anyone inside the organization that has, used their position and, funding from the organization to enjoy a lavish lifestyle above and beyond what is appropriate for the job, responsibilities, then they've done exactly that. They've put us at risk. So I kind of want to wrap things up with this. I want to talk a little bit about what could be done to save things. And so I have become aware of an organization called SaveTheSecond.org. That's their website address, Save the Second. It's a grassroots attempt to reinvent and reinvigorate the NRA from within. And it's got 5 goals that I think really kind of align well with what we've talked about tonight. And I'm not pushing them like I have an agenda here, other than I just want to see the Second Amendment preserved and its cause furthered. I'm not on the board of this organization or anything like that. I just think that what they've done is they've really kind of capsulized some common sense reform for the NRA that I would like to see enacted. So I'm gonna go over the 5 goals just real quick. So the first of their goals is to see the NRA adopt a smaller board of directors. They said that the board of directors should be lean, efficient, and focused on quality over quantity. And that makes perfect sense, right? So so that according to Investopedia.com, and I'm reading from SaveThe2A.org's website, most corporate boards range from 3 to 31 members, and some analysts even believe that the ideal size is 7. The NRA's board currently has 76 board members, over 5 times the national average, and over 10 times the ideal size suggested by this Investopedia group. Too many board members to meaningfully engage in a full board conversation. What they mean by that is, can you get all 76 people together at a board meeting to talk about business? And the answer to that, honestly, if you look at the attendance logs of the NRA, which they publish, the answer to that's no. Right? There are a lot of board members that are on the board and serve in absence, right? In absentia, they are not actually present. They're kind of like figureheads. I may be wrong about this, but I think one of the most prolific, easily recognizable board members that operates in that capacity, Ted Nugent. I believe that like the guy pretty much never shows up at board meetings according to the published minutes of the NRA.
You probably can't afford it, David. That's probably the issue.
Yeah, probably not, right? Only like a millionaire rock star, right? So they say that also another problem of having a large board is that real deliberation and discussion on big organizational issues is shifted to executive committee. So, it never happens in the closed public eye of the board, which is kind of an oxymoron. But all 76 board members are not really privy to what's going on, the real deliberation and discussion of governing business for the NRA. That happens in executive committee behind closed doors. And also they said that another problem with this giant board that they have currently is that board members are disconnected from the board's governing role, and participation is almost an honorary basis. So, it's kind of like being an honorary graduate of Yale University. It sounds great, but in reality, you got nothing. You're just kind of, we let you hang out with us occasionally, but the real business, the real meat of it, is something that you're not privy to. So
yeah, here's something else something else I would add is independently verified elections.
Yeah,
because currently there is no. And what's baffling to me, and I haven't attended the annual meeting yet, and I'm curious to see what'll happen next year.
You may have missed the boat, right? Yeah,
I may have. Yeah, because Ackerman and McQueen put that on, along with NRATV. They were responsible for that.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what next year's is like. I was planning to, this year just financially and because of work and being recently married, I just decided it wouldn't be responsible to make the trip, even though I really wanted to and would have loved meeting up with Mark and seeing you and Sandy again. But to me, I haven't seen anything like the passion that was poured behind Adam Kraut, right? And the number of people who were voting members that were supporting him, and for him to not even be, what is it, 3-4 years maybe now that he's been campaigning. There's been all kinds of action for him to somehow, there's so many names on that list that no one could, I don't understand how you could possibly say that there was greater support for the 6 other people that are members of the board of directors than Adam Kraut.
Some of those other 76 are people that you never even heard of, right? And the crazy thing is, it seems very ironic to me in a dirty sort of way that I can't prove any propriety for, that, you know, Adam has consistently come within like single digits of being elected, right? I mean, and that's almost like, that feels like a punch in the face from the NRA to say, man, you were like 4 votes, just 4, if 4 more people. That's how, you know, and it almost feels like a backhanded compliment. Oh, you were so close. You were so close.
You know, it kind of reminds me of a John Grisham novel. I think it's called The Firm. And it's in prison, and there are these 3 inmates that are lawyers, maybe judges. It's been a while since I read it, but and they kind of handed down decisions for the other inmates when there were disagreements or disputes, but all of their rulings were 2-1, and they were anonymous, right? To protect, so that there was never any way for someone to, you know, you always had plausible deniability, right?
That's funny.
That's exactly what the NRA Board of Directors elections, that's what it smells like to me. Is it's like, oh, you're so close, you know, you just have to do a little bit more.
You almost got it. Almost got it.
Keep trying, keep expending. You know, don't worry about reforming. And again, just the insane thing is, even if Adam Kraut was on the board of directors, I guarantee he wouldn't have any committee assignments.
No, they
look at Timothy Knight,
right?
Yeah, the 3 that we named or that you named earlier, Alan West. You know, it's like, okay, as if that would somehow change things. Right. And the size and scope of the NRA board right now is a direct result of the Cincinnati Revolt, the takeover in the 70s, and Wayne LaPierre doing his best to ensure that Neil Knox and others like him would never be able to wrest control of the organization from him and Marion Hammer, whose name we haven't mentioned her yet. We could do a whole other podcast on Marion Hammer alone.
I'm afraid
and the statements she's made. Yeah. So ironic. Yeah. I mean, as if the allegedly $1 million a day that the NRA is spending in legal entanglements right now isn't enough. That's just one more that they need, is to go after you and I, David.
Yeah. So goal number 2, save the 2A, save the second. Limit directors on the NRA board of directors to 4 consecutive terms. And so, according to one of their sources, 72% of boards have limits on how many consecutive terms an individual member can serve. And the most common is 2, term limit of 2 terms. The report concluded that term limits help ensure that a board's composition reflects its current leadership needs. So really what they're saying is that without term limits, it's difficult for the board to bring on new talent like Adam Kraut, new leadership, which is essential for long-term health of the leadership body. And so the Save the 2A is saying that, this would give that limiting directors on the board to 4 consecutive terms of 3 years each gives that board member as many as 12 years to accomplish his or her goals before they yield the seat. And so that they feel like, and I agree, that balances the NRA's competing needs for experience with fresh perspectives, right? So it doesn't keep a former board member from returning later on to resume service consecutively, but it says that they have to take a break. They have to sit it out for at least 1 3-year term, which I think is a good thing. Goal number 3, they say that they should impose minimum attendance requirements for directors. We talked about this a minute ago. This is here's something funny. They say here on the Save the 2A website, NRA life member Adam Kraut, an attorney and Second Amendment advocate, has done a phenomenal public service by publishing recent attendance records of all NRA board members. So that's a link. If you go to the Save the 2A's SaveThe2A.org's website and look for their link on our 5 goals and click on director attendance, you will see this link to Adam's material. And so it's very easy. It's a spreadsheet format. It shows excused absences, unknown absences, and whether or not they attended. And so, let's just scroll down through the list here. excused absence. There's so much yellow. Marianne Hammer, for the year of 2015, she missed the meeting in January. She missed the meeting in April, missed the meeting in September. In 2016, she missed all the meetings that were listed there. In 2017, she missed all the meetings there. So she has a 0% attendance record for the years 2015, 16, 17, and 18. That's pretty stellar. That's a straight goose egg right across the line there.
Maybe she thinks she's playing hearts or something. She's trying to shoot the moon. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's Ted Nugent missed January of 2015. Don't know why he missed. It was not excused. It was just he didn't show up in April of 15. Excused absence in September of 15, and again in January of 16. Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4 unexcused absences in a row, followed by an excused absence, followed by an unexcused. 0% from 2015 to 2018. 0% attendance rating for Ted Nugent. Fantastic. Fan-freaking-tastic. Yeah, and those are the goose eggs that I could spot off the top just easily. Oh, wait, is there another one in here hiding? Yeah, it looks like maybe there is. Carl Malone, goose egg straight across. So, yeah, it kind of, it's like, we're electing these people to represent us, and they're not even showing up, but we can't get Adam Kraut, who desperately wanted to be on the board, to make change happen on the damn board. I think he would have shown up. I think he would have. I think as an attorney who knows that if you don't show up to court to represent your case, that your client's going to lose, I think he would show up. So anyway, there you go. Attendance requirements for directors. Who'd have thought it? Basically, they're saying that 22% of the board was absent for at least 30% of the meetings between January of 15 and May of 2018. 4 board members did not attend a single meeting at all. So their plan proposed minimum attendance requirements. Basically, the board of directors meets 3 times every fiscal year, including the meeting in NRAM. How many of these a-holes do you think show up at NRAM and then just don't go to the meeting? Apparently, at least 4 of them, right? So, anyway, they said that under their proposal, any director who misses any 2 of those 3 board meetings would lose eligibility to be nominated by the nominating committee for re-election, but they could still run by petition if they so chose. That'd be an interesting petition to see. Hey, I didn't show up and represent you at any meeting, but still like you vote for me again. And then directors who missed 3 meetings would also be ineligible for re-election by any method. So that's pretty interesting.
Something else that's interesting to consider, and I just pulled up the PDF looking at board member attendance. The names we mentioned earlier, Timothy Knight, and Alan West, Dwayne Liptak, who we hadn't mentioned, but he's the owner, president, CEO of Magpul. I mean, who's listening that hasn't purchased multiple Magpul products, right?
Right.
The people that have been outspoken in terms of advocacy and wanting to clean up the NRA, so far as I've seen, have 100% attendance record.
Isn't that crazy?
Member meetings.
Isn't that crazy? Those are clearly the people that you don't want on any committees, right? The people, the people who actually show up to do their job, right?
Yeah.
That is just, if that doesn't tell you that, something is corrupt, something stinks in the NRA, then nothing will. Nothing that we tell you tonight will convince you if that doesn't right there. I'm scrolling through here. I'm looking to see. I'm looking for names. I feel kind of like calling people out, but I don't know. You know what? Here's the thing. Save the Second is actually posting for the next few weeks a board member's contact information per day, I think. And, it's just all the ways you can get in touch with the 76 board members and let them know what you think. And I think that's a pretty important part. You should do that. So, okay. So attendance requirements. Yeah, that makes sense. The next goal member engagement, goal number 4, get the membership more involved. So this is frustrating. This is an indictment of us. This is an indictment of the listeners. This is an indictment of the NRA membership as a whole. Listener, if you're a member of the NRA, that means you. If you're not a member of the NRA, different conversation. But so we, the members of the NRA, speaking as a life member myself, have consistently revealed abysmal voter turnout. In 2019, the committee mailed 2,452,813 ballots to voting eligible members, and only out of roughly 2.5 million members, only 146,000 ballots were returned. That's crazy. That's less than 6% of voter turnout for the NRA.
And that's based ridiculous. On a number of 2.5 million, roughly.
Yeah.
And yet the NRA continually claims to have over 5, sometimes over 6 million members.
So this is voting eligible members. So in order to be a voting eligible member, you have to be a life member or an endowment member or better, or I believe have been an annual member for, is it 5 now? It was 3. And I think they changed that kind of shadily, also, but it was, I think it's like, and it has to be consecutive, right? Consecutive years.
Yes.
So, if you were a member and then you weren't, then you remember again for 4 years, guess what? You're not eligible for voting because you weren't a member for, those 5 consistently or 3, whichever it was. I can't remember. I think you're right. I think it's 5 now. But yeah, so, for the NRA to represent its 5 million members, the members have to be active, be vocal. And that's what I said earlier. People have to get off their butts and do something. They have to, they have to fill out a form and, shade the circles with a pen or a pencil, slap a stamp on it and send it back in the mail.
Yep.
That's all you got to do.
Yeah. And you're right about the voting eligibility. But what I was going to go to is that right now, even if you wanted to join the NRA to make a difference from within, you would have to either become a life member or better, or you wouldn't have a say until, and I can't remember if it's 3 or 5. I believe it's been changed to 5 years. Yeah. So that's how long you would have until you were able to participate in unverified elections.
Frustrating,
right? Potentially make a change. So that's when we talk about whether we need the NRA, whether they're necessary, and we want to make a change from within. Right now, it's not possible for you to do that without donating a significant amount of money to essentially the current legal battle between the NRA, Ackerman McQueen, and until recently, members such as Chris Cox. So sorry to interrupt.
No,
but that's just perfect. The point I wanted to make when people say, hey, we need to reform from within. It's like, well, good.
What's that mean, right? So we're on the same wavelength here. Goal number 5, I'll hit this one real quick, and then I'm going to talk about some of what you just mentioned there. Goal number 5, they would like to see the NRA return to exclusive focus on Second Amendment issues. I mean, I don't know how else better to say that. It's so here's the thing, right? In a recent complaint filed in Virginia State Court, again, reading from SaveThe2A.org, NRA lawyers freely admitted that, quote, certain NRA stakeholders, unquote, are, quote, concerned that NRATV's messaging has veered far afield of the Second Amendment and has deviated from the NRA's core mission and values. And the lawyer said, we agree. So basically, it's kind of like this. The NRA has grown more politically partisan over the years. It's started to latch on to hot button political issues that have nothing to do with the Second Amendment. In doing that, it's alienated thousands of members and potential members who would support, who do support the Second Amendment, but otherwise don't fit the NRA's political stereotype. We've even kind of talked about that, here on the show in the past about the need for diversity and inclusion in the NRA. And we had Tiffany Johnson on talking about widening the 2A tent and bringing on people that don't look, act, vote, worship, live, whatever, like you do necessarily, because we need the support and because the 2A is for everyone. But, the NRA has kind of polarized itself in such a way that it's not super inviting to everybody in the United States. And so what the second org folks are after is one mission, one focus. Again, reading from their website, they want to make sure that the NRA abandons all projects, messaging, and partnerships that do not directly relate to the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
Seems pretty clear to me. Focus on what's important. Focus on the Second Amendment.
Well, here's something interesting to consider is that, and for the people that are still listening, they probably agree with you who didn't tune out an hour ago,
right?
With you and I, that they probably want to see the NRA being more active politically, particularly at the state level.
Yeah.
Because we don't see a lot of challenges coming at the federal level, at least not through the legislature. We do see them coming from presidents who have an R behind their name. Through executive fiat and regulatory practices. But the politics aside, I personally have the opinion that the NRA would be better serving the community if they actually focused on what their original goal was, which is, improving marksmanship, introducing, quite often I'm pointed to when there are disputes about the efficacy of the NRA, people say, well, yeah, look at how much good they've done in terms of education and introducing new shooters. I don't think right now they're so politically charged and they're so tied to candidates like Donald Trump. I don't know about you, but and I've received a lot of them, at least one a month. I get a call. I get at least one call a month from what's the term, professional fundraisers on behalf of the NRA asking me to rejoin. And I'm always very polite and I go through, and we've got a short survey and it's always one question about, relating to the election. That's all it's about is, do you agree that there are rabid liberal members of Congress that are trying to take away our gun rights, or something to that effect?
Yeah, something that's written to beg the question, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, well, this isn't a survey. This is, as someone who has made thousands and thousands of phone calls in support of candidates and it's not a survey. You're just asking me a question. You're looking for a yes, like a used car salesman, right? Like, hey, you're getting me on the affirmative and then asking me to pull out my wallet. And I take the time to say, I absolutely agree. And I'm very concerned about what's going on, but here's why I'm not willing to pull my wallet out and rejoin until I see certain changes. It's because of my love of the Second Amendment. It's because of my love of our natural rights that we have independently of what the Constitution says. Like it purports to protect them, but we're ignoring that right now. But it's our natural rights as human beings anyway to be able to defend ourselves. And this is, I have a principled stance here, and that's why it's because of that stance that I'm unwilling to funnel further money into. And most of them have no idea. Most of the ones I've spoken to, I've had one that was very huffy and hung up on me. And I'm guessing that she's probably received a lot of feedback that wasn't as polite as what I gave. If that makes sense. I'm guessing that's the main issue there. But a lot of them have, when I ask them if they have any idea what's been, revealed recently as far as the corruption within the NRA, most of the professional fundraisers that I've spoken to have no idea. And it's like, I honestly, I would rather see the NRA focus on educating and bringing new shooters, new gun owners into the fold, teaching gun safe. Like, I would rather see absolutely no political action from them whatsoever than what they're currently doing.
Right.
And the way they're polarizing us.
Right.
And what's sad is that you see the amount of money that they've spent on candidates like Donald Trump and how it's not only been ineffective. I mean, at best, you can look at the history of the NRA, in my opinion, and say that they have done a decent job of managing crises, right? Like, oh, well, the NFA, or other bills that they've either helped to write or endorsed because of purported benefits to gun owners. Oh, well, they got handguns taken out of the NFA. All right. Well, that's a good thing, but we're still living under the NFA. right? Oh, the Firearm Owners Protection Act, it did all this great stuff. Yeah, but look at what the Hughes Amendment did. And they said that they would be focusing on combating that and haven't spent a single cent to that effect, and have come out since and revealed their true intentions or opinions, if you will, saying we don't believe that, members like Marion Hammer, former president, current board member, with a 0% attendance record, right? And have revealed their true colors.
Well, so yeah, I mean, they've really done so little to appeal to, the serious Second Amendment supporter. The listener of this show. They've, in my opinion, they've done very little to appeal to that person. They've certainly done very little to appeal to that person if they are not a conservative, Republican voter, or at least just a conservative voter. They're doing hardly anything at all to appeal to minority members. I think Klein Noir was a step in the right direction, and I really, I enjoy listening to the guy, and I agree with most of everything he has to say. I think he's, he was a step in the right direction, but they could have done a lot more, and they failed to. They've done, as far as I know, nothing to reach out to, the liberal voting. I don't know. I mean, pick a demographic. The gay liberal, male. What are they doing to reach out to that person and tell them, hey, the Second Amendment's for you, and we're here to defend your rights to own a gun to protect yourself. Well,
and I think it's not even a failure to target certain demographic groups, as they've thoroughly tied themselves to a particular demographic group, which they're preaching to the choir exclusively.
Right.
They're not doing missional outreach in that sense. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying it's egregious in the sense that they're trying to milk. They're preaching to the choir. They're just looking to
it's lazy.
Fundraise from people that already agree with their purported goals.
It's very lazy.
Yeah. And not only that, it's like dangling a carrot in front of a horse, right? And never feeding it, because once you give it to them, guess what? You now no longer have control. And I think that's what we're seeing, is that there's, it's easy money to be made by campaigning on fear, right? Fundraising on fear. And we saw what happened once Donald Trump was elected, and how the firearms market as a whole saw, who was that large distributor that we saw recently, or maybe not distributor, I believe so, down in South Carolina, that's gone out of business because they had millions and millions tied up in inventory that they thought they would be selling for extreme profit, and that prediction came wrong. And which is ostensibly a good thing, but everyone was, they bank on having certain fundraising, but they bank on crisis, and when we don't see that come to fruition, there's extreme financial penalties.
Sure. Yeah, that was Ellett Brothers that went out.
That's right.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. So, what are some things that you can do? And so, Jordan, you mentioned this earlier about voting. Being a voting member, and if you're not already one, is now the right time. Is the climate right to become one? Let me just say this. So, if you're currently a voting member of the NRA, don't resign your membership. I see people that, saying that all the time. It's like, no, I resign my membership. I told them to cancel it. I don't want to be a member anymore. If you're already a voting member, we need your vote to change things. So it doesn't cost you anything to stay a voting member, unless you're doing it annually as a, an annual member, not as a life member, as an endowment or whatever. But, if you're already a voting member, keep it up. Because we need it. We need your vote. We need every single vote. Again, if they're not lying to us, folks like Adam Kraut lose by 4 votes and such per election. So, God knows we need your votes. Second, stop all other money flowing into the NRA for the time being. In my opinion, no more donations, revoke any estate planning, et cetera, and let them know that you're doing it and why you're doing it, right? tell them, hey, I'm taking the NRA off as the beneficiary of my estate when I pass. And here's why. You want it back? Here's what you need to do. That sounds like blackmail. It may be, right? But you're voting with your dollars in that case. You're saying, I'm voting no confidence in you in your current state. So why would I continue to fund you? I think money and lack of money is the one thing that gets a big organization's attention like this. I would also start contacting companies that support the NRA and put pressure on them to cut funding as well. Let them know why, right? I mean, so, the big companies that it's real easy to find them. Pick up a copy of American Rifleman or any other NRA publication and look to see who's advertising in the magazine. Contact them, especially if you're already doing business with them, especially if you already own their products. Don't go do something stupid. Nobody's saying, hey, go burn your Smith & Wesson, firearms or anything dumb like that. Just let Smith & Wesson know, hey, until the NRA gets its crap together, I'd really appreciate if you quit funding them. Right.
Absolutely. Well, I can't tell you how many men I know that are, of your generation, David, or older.
Oh my God.
That refuse to buy Ruger.
Yeah. Now I'm being insulted. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, those with the honor of a hoary head, as the Bible says,
oh
right?
Oh my God. My hair is still very black.
That refused to purchase Ruger firearms because of Bill Ruger and the his politics bending over for the Clinton administration and others. And it's like, it's the company is under completely new management, ownership, everything else. That was decades ago. They're still holding on to that. Yeah,
Smith & Wesson was guilty of that garbage too, and
they're still putting those stupid locks on their revolvers, which is the reason I don't own a 686, and I would love to buy a but. Where I was going to go with that is that there is a temptation. It's easy to outrage is a great motivator, right? It's a profitable one,
right?
But something I did recently, based on just in line with what you were saying about reaching out to firearms companies, instead of just saying, hey, you guys instituted magazine capacity limits and everything else, bent over backwards for the assault weapons ban, and therefore I'll never buy another Ruger firearm in perpetuity. That doesn't do anything for you.
Right.
So I, maybe this is a little weird. Just taking a step back, I'm sure the listeners of the show are familiar with the High Point Yeet Cannon YC9 debacle.
Yeah, I think we need to do. No, that's not a debacle. That's internet greatness, is what that is.
But So I left a review on the High Point Firearms page.
Okay.
Let's see, end of June and late June, about 2 weeks ago, and basically said, hey, it may not be the highest, it may not be the highest quality firearms on the market, but they listen to their customers,
sort of,
and they're giving us a YC9, right? But it was kind of one of those, because there had been a campaign to leave low ratings on their page, which I hadn't done.
I understand.
Hey, you know what?
Yeah.
And independently of this, they actually have been pretty, I don't own a High Point firearm. I never have.
But
later this year,
you're going to buy a Yeet Cannon. Yes.
Oh, you bet I will. I'm probably going to have to get a Rebel suppressor to put on it but no. Anyway, so I got a message from their page.
Oh, wow.
Saying, hey, hi, thanks for recommending us. We're glad you had a great experience. If you need anything, feel free to direct message us.
Well, that's good.
So I gave them a thumbs up, and then I took a screenshot of their website that has this little NRA banner. Join the NRA. High Point Firearms encourages you to join the NRA to help protect your Second Amendment rights. And I said, I know it's a touchy subject, or I said, I do have one complaint, sent the screenshot, and I said, I know it's a touchy subject right now. And I got a response from them almost immediately. And they said, I'm sure it's one they've sent before, but they said, as one of our largest and longest gun right advocates, we have been longtime members. We are also members of GOA, Gun Owners of America, and USCCA, the United States Concealed Carry Association.
Right.
We will be adding more buttons to our webpage, and trust me, we are not happy with the NRA and how they're acting right now, but they still throw a heavy hammer. So, and then I had a little bit more of a conversation, and they said, yeah, I am sure they are catching it from everyone, as they should. We hope for an overhaul.
Fantastic.
And and it's like, you know what? That goes
a long way.
far further than when you want to talk about having a financial impact on organizations like the NRA and making change. Getting firearms companies who give them thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars a year,
and they're in the industry that they have maybe more of a direct line of communication with the NRA than we do.
Absolutely.
So it's
that's what we need to be doing. I'm not saying I did something great. It was just a simple hey, here's the one minor complaint. Tried to make it respectful and say, hey, I know it's touchy. I kind of acknowledge that, and they said, hey, we know exactly what you're talking about. We're members of other organizations as well. We'll be adding other organizations. We're not happy, and there needs to be overhaul. And that's how we need to be generating pressures. Like if we can get High Point to release an edition of their firearm of their new pistol named the Yeet Cannon, we can certainly and then how many other companies jumped on that bandwagon, right?
Right.
It's a good time once everyone's kind of fired up and communicating. It's like, wow, look at the impact it was had when they clearly didn't want to. This is clearly not a direction that this firearms manufacturer wanted to go in.
They should have embraced that from the moment it began. But yes, I agree.
Absolutely. Yeah. So just think about the impact that we can have. And it's silly to even call what happened on Instagram primarily activism, but it was humorous,
grassroots movement, and it demonstrated the power of the people, right? And so I think perfect example. So along the same lines, and so I'll pick up right where High Point left off. Next thing you can do is just throw your support to SaveTheSecond.org and the Firearms Policy Coalition, the Second Amendment Foundation, et cetera. And frankly, do that even if and when the NRA gets its stuff together, right? So I'm not saying do that temporarily, hey, this is my rebound. My Second Amendment rebound is go to these other organizations until the NRA loves me again like it used to. Even if and when the NRA gets its crap together and comes back to you and treats you the way that it ought to treat us in the Second Amendment, continue supporting those other organizations. I feel like we need to diversify our portfolio, if you will, as defenders and advocates of the Second Amendment. Right.
Yeah.
So
Sandy talked about that earlier, putting all your eggs in one basket with the marketing
exactly right
or media firm. And I'm not currently a member of the NRA, but I am a quarterly member. I can't remember. It's just direct deposit, right? But of both Gun Owners of America and the Firearms Policy Coalition, and also donate to American Suppressor Association. There are plenty of organizations. I believe Pete Brownell, if I remember correctly, is a board member with the ASA currently.
And I think he just also resigned from the board of directors of the NRA. Which is,
he did.
Good for him. Perhaps I could have really used somebody like Pete on the inside changing things, but it sounded like he just got frustrated with it and said, "No, I don't want this on me." And I can't blame him to an extent there. So
and here's something. It's like I agree with what you said, but I think maybe what we've been seeing recently with committee appointments being rescinded. I think maybe he decided, you know what, I'm going to cut my losses. I'm not dealing with this BS anymore.
Right.
And so I'm not going to fault him for that, because I think he made the decision that I essentially made as merely a member. I think he made that as a board member, saying, you know what, I'm not even going to waste my time. I'm going to go to a place where I can, instead of I'm just writing this off and I'll let. I don't disagree with you, but I think I think he's largely vindicated in my mind for just leaving entirely and saying I'm going to devote myself to another organization.
Sure. Well, I mean, you only have so much time
to do. Yeah.
No, so
and I mean, Brownells is about an hour and a half west of where I live right now, if that. I've been there, shot many times. I absolutely love what they do. I wish I didn't have to pay taxes on stuff I purchased from, free shipping, but I still have the 7% sales tax. Anyway, he's got a lot on his hands already.
I mean, if you got to split your time up, you might as well split it up and send it to the places where you can do some good. And I'm sure if he felt like that was a dead end, then why not cut the losses?
I agree.
Well, Jordan, thanks for hanging out with me tonight. I think, we've kind of come to a point where I think it's reasonable to close the episode. We started off, and like I said, it's something that we needed to talk about. I still think that the current state of affairs at the NRA is very appropriately described as a dumpster fire. And I hope that it's under control. I think there's going to be an inclination perhaps for some people to say this is a NRA bashing episode. And, look, folks, what we rattled off are facts, right? They're historical facts of the organization and the things it's been involved in. And if that's bashing, if bringing up history and pointing to history to say, look, this is what the organization was and where it failed us in the past, and we don't want to return to that again, and then drawing parallels between, the coup in the 1970s that actually brought us a kind of functional, productive NRA that then devolved, is kind of, educational to point to where we're looking, what we're dealing with today. If that's bashing, then so be it. Right. I don't think it is. I think that it's informing and educating and also hopefully motivating you to get in behind the efforts to reform the NRA and save the NRA from itself and take it back for the members. And right now I'm very impressed with the Save the Second organization. And I think that, they have managed to, again, kind of capsulize some things that make good sense and would maybe put the NRA back on the right tracks. So there you go. That's what this episode was about. Sandy has left us. I'm staring at an empty desk. The challenge of recording when kids are awake is that my daughter wants all the attention in the world, and I think my wife had to go finally just sit on her and make her stay in her bed. So anyway, thanks to Sandy for joining us. Thank you for joining us, Jordan. Sorry Mark couldn't join us. I'm sure he'll be back for the next one. Jordan, anything you want to tell folks about how they can connect with you afterwards, or should they just hunt you down on, maybe that's the thing, hunt Jordan down on the Facebook Shooters Nation community group.
Absolutely.
Right? That's the place to find you. So
yeah.
That's an easy way.
Try and one up me on Patreon too.
Okay. Yeah.
I donate the same amount of money to Military Arms Channel or to Shooters Nation as I do to the Military Arms Channel. I'm a big fan of what Tim does there.
Definitely.
And I think, something else that, as we've been talking about the NRA, because I legitimately didn't intend to come off or for this to be an NRA bashing opportunity. After the massacre in Las Vegas in 2017, there were, it was roundtable, there were many discussions, and something that I absolutely agree with that Military Arms Channel, that Mr. Guns and Gear, that Yankee Marshall, that many others, Iraq Veteran 8888, multiple channels that most people are familiar with, came out and said, look, the NRA is the truth, strength, and import is the members. It's not the organization. It's us. Look at what we have accomplished on our own through staying informed, connected, and the true impact is when we as individuals, as a community comprised of individuals, reach out to our legislators at the state, local, and federal level. That's where the impact is felt, not in sending $25, $35 a year to the NRA for lawsuits against Ackerman McQueen, right? That's, maybe that's a bit of a low blow, but honestly, the impact that we have is as voting individuals. And so I think we need to learn to leverage that better. And it's necessary to have a bit of a purifying movement right now, but in the long term, it's good for the growth of the firearms owners community as a whole.
Agreed.
That's what I would say. Pull out your wallet for organizations, for influencers that are actually making a difference, that are principled, and that's how we'll see a positive impact made.
All right, folks, that's a wrap on this subject for now. Honestly, I can't say that we won't keep talking about this. Chances are we will. Guns and gear are fun to talk about. We love having our guest subject matter experts on the show to learn from them. But this subject is where the rubber really meets the road, in my opinion. The NRA has been, for better or worse, the largest pro-Second Amendment vanguard for at least the last 5 decades. The reason I say that period of time specifically is because of what the NRA was or wasn't prior to 1977. Hopefully, you'll agree with me that the Second Amendment is worth fighting for. Hopefully, you agree with me that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shouldn't be infringed. And like me, you feel that there is a need for gun owners to come together, still united under big banners to make our voices heard at scale. But like me, hopefully you also believe that it is past time for us to be loudly vocal as pro-2A individuals as well. And by that, I not only mean that we need to roll up our sleeves and loudly demand that the NRA get its act together, but that we also take the burden upon ourselves to make our belief in the importance of the 2A known to our elected representatives. Because honestly, folks, at the end of the day, the reason why this BS at the NRA hurts so bad is because American gun owners have largely outsourced the defense of the 2A to the NRA. And now we've all got egg on our faces. Now, switching gears slightly, this is probably going to be the last show for July. We're going to take the remainder of this month off. Got a lot of things going on between Mark and myself, his day job, my day job. Got travel going on between both of us, and honestly, just things going on with summer. So hope you'll forgive us, but we need to hit the pause button. Absolutely need to hit the pause button. But we'll be back with you guys again in August. But until then, here's how you can connect with us. You can connect with us at shootersnation.com and on facebook.com/shootersnation, on Instagram as @shootersnationradio. And you can reach me by email as david@shootersnation.com. And you can reach Mark at mark@shootersnation.com. Real easy, right? Very, very creative. If you're in the market for a new holster or other firearms gear, be sure to head over to squaredawaycustoms.com and check out what Mark and the gang have ready for you. Squared Away Customs manufactures custom Kydex holsters and other carry gear for civilians, law enforcement, and military. They're also a stocking Polymer 80 dealer. Be sure to use coupon code ShootersNation to save yourself from cash. That's it for this episode. That's it for July. We'll talk to you again soon. But until then, if you can't be safe, be dangerous.
The preceding segment was a production of the Shooters Nation podcast. Visit us online at shootersnation.com.